Hi, this is Alex Zilberscher, and this is going to be a brief tutorial on how to use the HouseCustomizer prefab within the Children of Liberty project. So what you're first going to want to do is drag in what I've already dragged in here, which is the customizable house prefab. This is located, as you can see here, in the prefabs, 3D geometry, building, and then house customizer part in the folder structure. From there, you'll be presented with the House Customizer prefab. This allows you to basically build a house with whatever customizations you want and sort of do that quickly rather than having to start everything straight from hand. So the first thing you're going to want to do is probably load up a preset. So you can see all the presets that are currently available by clicking here. For example, you can use the default and click load on that. That'll load just the default house here, as you can see. Right now, since this is still in the prototyping stage, we have an example for a city-like house, which can be seen here. You can load a sort of a showcase of all of the features right here, or you can load something for extensions. But for now, we're going to load the default because we're just going to show how everything works right now. So the way the loading and saving works is you select one of these and it'll present the preset name here. And you can load there, and you can save over the name by clicking Save there. If you want to enter a new name to save, you could enter example, for example, click Save, and it'll show up right there. And if I want to load example, it'll now load the default house as we had it set. But for now, we're going to load the default. And then we're going to want to go into the customizable house area. One thing to note is that you definitely do not want to click Apply on the prefab. The basic prefab is meant to be the same for all of the customizable houses that are within the project. So clicking on apply on the prefab will apply that to all of those houses, which is not ideal. So make sure to do all of the loading and saving in here. Don't mess around up here. And if you ever want to just revert to the default house, you can also click to revert to default and then just click generate house, and you'll get that there. But moving on. For when you want to actually start generating the house, you can generate everything separately. As an example, I'm going to do a clear house here. You could generate just the foundation, you can generate the ceilings, you can generate the exterior walls, etc., etc. This is useful if you want to make sort of background scenery and all you want is the exterior walls and the foundation. And then you'll just have houses with much less weight to them because they won't have any of the extra stuff inside. Even if you used a house preset which had more things inside, you can duplicate that essentially. But moving on, now that we have a generalized house here, what we can do from here is we can modify the dimensions. So say we want it to be wider, skinnier, and taller. We can do all that. And now we have a weird, wide, skinny house. We can modify the front gable height. That is the line right here. So you can make that higher, or we can make that lower. If you want to give it a side gable instead, I'm just going to do a quick load here to get it back to how it was. For example, we wanted a side gable, that's just changing where it is from the front to the side there. You need to make sure that you put the front gable height to 0 since you can't have two different roofs essentially. But that'll allow you to modify the side gable height. And then you can set the number of floors inside. So say we want the house to be a little bit taller and maybe have 2 floors. We can do that, and then when you go inside the house, you'll notice that we have a ceiling here, and internally we have 2 floors and an attic. So that's how the dimensions work. We're just going to use this house for now. It seems fine. Moving on from there, you can modify the outer textures, inner textures, colors, and tiling. So that's just how everything looks on the house. So for example, we can modify the house siding here. You just click on this little thing to the side, you can see it present all of them. Now this you don't need to regenerate a house to change, you just select on them and it'll automatically update everything. So we could change it to a blue siding, change it to a gold siding, red, etc. This would be for like a barn look. And these all pertain to different materials. So like the roof could be that, for example. Outer trim pertains to like door frames and whatnot. You can see this for the reference in the documentation if you want to go there, which is right on that tab there. They have all the inner textures, that's exactly the same. The colors will modify things that are just modifiable just for the color, so that'll change sprites essentially. If we add a window, I'll show you changing the shutter color later on. And then the tilings is sort of an interesting one. So this one's especially helpful for if we want our texture like brick. Just brick. You'll notice that the bricks are very, very, very small. And that simply won't do. So what we can do is we can modify the tiling, which is how dense it is essentially. Making it more dense right now. And now, as you can see, we're bringing our bricks back into focus. And now we have nice, realistically sized bricks, which is great for city-like houses. So that allows us to sort of modify how the textures all look. If you ever want to change one of those will also all update automatically. You don't need to regenerate the house for anything. But that's how to change how the textures look on the house. Moving on from there, go into outer details. Roof edges, we'll add that there. It's just sort of an edge along the roof. This corresponds with wall edges, which are these, and foundation edges, which, as you can guess, is an edge along the foundation. And for certain styles of houses, this is more realistic. For a brick house, it looks a little bit odd, but all those options are up to you. These are the default window settings. You can set these to whatever you want. If you want to activate the window shutter, you have to choose a window frame type that allows for a shutter. So the top and bottom frames allow for it. The outline with inner does not. And then we'll see what all these do farther along. So we're going to add some windows. We're going to add one element to this list. And then what this will allow us to do is basically make a set of windows. So if you want windows all along one wall, rather than having to make multiple different window elements, we're just going to add a number of placements to it. So say you want them on the first floor, we'll add 2 placements. We'll put one maybe like here, one over here, and we'll click generate on that. And as you can see, we've now generated 2 windows with our 16 pane alpha and the outline with it. Or I'll give an example of changing the top to bottom. That'll change the window frame on it, and we add a window shutter. We can add the panel like so. The placement will let you shift it from left to right. So say I want this all the way to the left for this window, it will go all the way there. Want all the way to the right, it will go all the way there. And this is locked by how wide the house is currently. We can, of course, change it to, for example, the right wall. And then these will now be on the right side. Or we can change it to the left. And now they're on the left. But you get the idea there. We're going to keep them on the front for now, just for ease of use. And then you can add an awning to it. So now you have 2 awnings here. I'm going to go and reduce this back to 1 for now. You can change the floor. That'll change how high up it is based on how many floors you have. It is worth noting that if you place the window on a floor that's higher than the house is, as you can see, there's no 3rd floor to this house, but it's trying its best. So I would avoid doing that, but that's why that occurs. The single awning type will always appear directly above the window. You can change its texture using the textures over there. And same with the single balconette, which will add just a little balconette there. However, if you want to have an awning go over multiple windows like this, what you can do is you can add this here and then change where it's placed. So you can push it over a little bit to the right, and then you can cover multiple windows like that. And you can do that same thing with the large awning. So you can cover maybe 3 windows, and that's how you emulate the effect of the windows on the city house. So then you can also override detail. So you can see we've set certain window frames and shutters, etc. over here. If you want to have 1 or 2 windows in your house have a different aesthetic, say you want to have a 24 pane alpha and outline, you can override that here. And you can also override the window frame or the window shutter if you select a frame that has a viable shutter again. But that's basically all there is to windows. So moving on, reset that. We're going to move on to the gable window. So gable windows, like so, appear right where the gable is. So this is the gable right here. This is sort of like a nice just arching aesthetic. You can also set your gable window to be on other walls. I would not recommend doing it on the right side, for example, because the gable doesn't exist there. It will try its best, but it has nothing to construct the window out of. And then you can modify, for example, where it is placed to the right or left by the placement X that's going along the X-axis, or the placement Y, which is going along the Y-axis, if you want to sort of adjust those. However, most of the time, you're probably just going to want to have it nice and centered there. And then moving on from there, you can override the details or set them here. For example, if you want a round gable window, you can make it round. If you do want a round gable window, it's recommended to push it up a bit, otherwise it'll sort of merge into the roof like that. So to do that, you just push that up by maybe half, and now you have a nice round gable window that'll work nicely with your ceilings there. Ideally, if you're going to use a round gable window like this, you should probably make a bigger gable. That would be for a very large house, but that's just as an example. And then if you want to override the details, for example, here, I want to revert it back to a semicircle and have a round one on the back side of the house, you could do that. And this is the frame override, so it'll try to match the frame that you're using with the regular windows, but if you want to give your gable window an outline versus like what it has with the top and bottom or none, just have no frame like that, you can set that as well. And then one thing I mentioned earlier is just a callback to the colors. So I want to set the gable window color. You can just do that, and I'll modify it to whatever color you want. Probably not going to have a lot of New England 1700 era houses with cyan tint, but that is okay. So we're going to get rid of the gable window for now. Go back to having store windows. So moving on to the store windows. Just going to generate one here that is inside the door. That's not ideal. Push it a little bit to the side. And now we have a nice little store window. So this is essentially a window that we used in storefronts. Right now it doesn't have a glass texture on it, but that will probably be added later. And then you can add an awning type similar to the regular windows like that. Not recommend to add a single awning type since it's not quite big enough for a store window, but if you want to make a small awning and cover a couple windows or like a window and a door, that would work a lot better. And then one other thing you can do is if you modify the advanced options and make the wall thickness a bit thicker, you will get this option for indenting it. And then when you indent it, the window will be indented into the house. The reason that the wall needs to be thicker for that is that if you do not make the wall thicker, the indent will actually push it all the way through the wall. So that option will only present itself if you have the room for it. But it can add a nice little aesthetic to storefront, as seen in the, we'll go back to the city example, where we have nice indented and laid out store windows. But in any case, moving on. Gonna load back up the default. We'll throw back to what we had before. So right now we can add more outer doors. As you can see, we have one right now. This one does not have any steps, however, so we can generate some steps here. The steps will be always the width of the door, and it'll generate steps based on how high the foundation is, so we'll make sure it hits the ground. You can change the wall similar to windows here. You can change the placement from the left to the right. All that works how you'd expect it. You can add awnings, same as the windows. But we're probably just going to keep that basic door for now. Moving on to the chimneys. Going to add one chimney here. So by default, the chimneys will be directly in the center of the house, which is generally not the most aesthetic place to put it. Usually I like to put it somewhere off to the side, not usually quite all the way to the side, but sort of indented into the house a little bit. So we're going to keep that chimney there like that. Don't worry about that sort of Z fighting looking going on there. That's only for the selection. When you actually go to the game view, it'll look fine. But yeah, so you can modify the width of the chimney, you can modify the depth, the height, etc. And then you can get to the extrudes. So the extrudes are a little bit neat. You can add something like this, where now you have a little bit of an indent. That doesn't look great there, but we add some more height to it. Maybe a left extrude. Now you can see we're getting a little bit more of a realistic chimney shape for a lot of these houses. And you can modify the angle as well, if you want to make it sort of a sharp angle or a long angle. That allows you to customize how the extrudes work. So you'll notice on this side it's all flat because we didn't add a right extrude, which would push it out to the right, or a back extrude, which would push it out to the left back. That's how the chimneys work. And that's how you modify all of those elements. So we're going to delete our chimney for now, get back to the basic house. Make sure you click enter, otherwise it will not register it. Moving on to porches. So we're going to add a really basic front porch right now. This one does not have any steps to it, you'll notice. To do that, we need to check where we want some stairs. So we can add some left stairs here, we can add some right stairs. We can add a middle stairs. That'll make a nice little stepway there. And then if we want to, we can move the middle stairs off to the right, we can move it to the left. It'll get columns out of the way to make sure there's room for it. Then we can change the width of the middle stairs to make them a little wider. But we're probably just putting them directly in the middle there. Something nice like that. If it's a little bit wider, it will not affect the columns there. So you can also affect the length of the porch. You can make it the entire length of that wall. You can make it a little bit shorter. Whatever you want to do. For this example, we'll keep it at the length of the wall. And you can also alter the width, so if you want to come out dangerously far in that case, you can do that. But this is a little small house, so we'll keep it as a little, maybe a 3-size porch. And then also, if you want to add an additional porch, so what you can do is this. You can add this one to the right side, and you can have the whole porch sort of wrap around. So we'll put this one all the way to the left to make its length a little bit shorter. Get rid of the left stairs on this one, the right stairs on this one. And then what we can do is, because this is all the way to the right side, or because it's all the way, notice that this one's all the way to the left, so we can add a left corner, and this one's the length of both sides, so we can add a right corner. And what that does is it'll generate this little porch corner that'll connect the two porches like that. And that'll give you a sort of seamless porch design. We probably wouldn't want a middle stairs on that one either. That's a good example of how to create a sort of porch as shown in the showcase example. And then, of course, we can modify the colors of the... This would be an example of the porch railing colors. If we want to modify that color, it's very easy to do. Especially if you want to match the trim of the house. It's very, very easy. So we're going to reduce the porch again. And now we're going to add some dormers. So before I do this, I'm going to make the gable a little bit bigger so we have a little bit more room, because this is a very small house. But let's add some dormers. So dormers are added a little bit similar to windows. We're just going to generate this. Seems to be on the other side. To give an example of what a dormer is if you're not aware. That does not look great with the current dimensions. Let's see. It's possible our advanced options got a little bit screwy there for the dormers. Let's see. Well, we'll determine that later. In any case, we're going to get rid of the frame for now. Seems that something is bugging that one out. But we'll keep with the basic window there. But this is how to add dormers. You can adjust the placement left and right here along the window. You can adjust the Y placement, so that's lower or higher along the window, and then you can add multiple different placements. So you can add, like, say we want 4 dormers, and we want this one to be here, this one to be here, this one to be here. Well, it's a very small house, so maybe 4 was a bit ambitious. We'll do 2. Keep this one over here. And now I have some nice looking dormers here. Not exactly sure why their frames are a little bit bugged out in this version of the house, but we'll figure that out later. And if you want to switch which roof it is on, you can swap it to the other side here, and then they'll appear over here. now if we want to edit something not outside the house, on the inside of the house, we can instead look to our inner details. So looking inside the house, we have a nice little wallpaper going around, but not a lot of detail going around in general. One thing we can do is that you can add rafters. That'll add some to the ceiling and all subsequent ceilings. This is a one-story house. You should probably make it a little bit taller for when we want to add some stairs and whatnot. So that'll give us a little bit of a taller house. That should probably be 3 floors, actually. Yeah, it's a little better. So what we can do now is we can add, for example, some inner walls. Inner walls are pretty simple to add. Right now we just generated one. The width by default is just sort of the length of the house. You can rotate it and they'll fall in that way. This is basically just to section off different rooms. You can adjust how it's placed to the left and to the right by adjusting the x-axis, forward and back by using the y-axis. Right now, since it's the length of the house, you can't really do that, but if we make the length shorter, you can see that we can adjust it all the way to the left or all the way to the right or somewhere in the middle. So we can section off a little room here. By default, it has one door in each wall. You can make that 0 if you just want it to be a plain wall. And then the door will go away. Otherwise, this is basically just a very simple door and wall. And we can see a good example of that in the showcase, which I'll show later. But for now, we're just going to take out the inner walls because we would like to add some stairs to our house. So I'm going to go and regenerate that. This is a very small house, so we have a very big staircase, but that's okay. But say we want the staircase to be a little bit smaller. We can make the width a little bit thinner. Can make the length a little bit shorter. A little steep now, but that's okay. And if we want, we can place it all the way off to the right side of the room. So that way it's not blocking us off anymore. In this case, we would probably want to get rid of the rafters if we want to push it all the way over there. Or actually, one thing we could do is we could rotate it 90 degrees and place it along that wall. And now we are all set because it'll cut away the rafter there. Probably want it a little bit more towards the middle though, so we're not walking into nothingness. So right here, because the staircase is now all the way on the side of the wall, the left guardrail seems to be a little bit cut off here. So what we can do for that is we can disable the left guardrail, and that'll just take that away so we're not having it sort of sticking out there. We can also disable any of the other railings if we want to just get rid of that railing there because it's along the wall. We can also adjust the cutout length. So for example, that'll make this shorter. And that's basically all there is to staircases. They're fairly simple. The railings will generate themselves based on what you've set in there. And now that all that's out of the way, that's basically all the details regarding making houses that are basic and whatnot. We can also add a extension to our house. Extensions are basically additional add-ons to them. So right now we just add extension to the front. It's probably the best idea, so we'll add it to the right side. And then everything that you want the extension to be, if you want it to be exactly the same as the default house or whatever else you want it to be, you can specify that in the extents, dimensions, outer details, and inner details. It will still share the same textures, for example. So if you want both the house and its extension to be brown or blue, it's not too difficult. All of that will still carry over and automatically update. But you can add as many extensions as you want. So if you want 15, 20, it doesn't matter. And here I'll give a good example of what a house looks like with multiple extensions. This is just sort of a cluster of them. But here you can see how it would work. They'll automatically cut walls in the holes. This one has an inner wall, sort of allowing you to have a natural transition between them. And extensions can have different heights, and these walls can also cut into them as well. But that is how the extensions work. if you wanted this house to be taller, if these were multiple floors, it would cut into the second floor as well. That allows you to make some more variety for the houses. Going back to the showcase, this is how the door windows are supposed to look. I'm guessing it's in the advanced options they got messed up. This is a good example of what you can do with these sort of tools. So you can set different windows to have different characteristics here. This one has a nice little arch. These have the top and bottom windows, different shutters. We have gable windows. We have sets of dormers. We have a nice chimney with an extrude there. We have multiple floors, a staircase that leads up to the second floor, multiple walls cutting off in different areas. Or you can see something more similar to the city example, which will generate this sort of fully fledged city house. It's not really meant to be gone into, so there's no staircases in it, but it's a nice little part of a cityscape. So for this case, we could, for example, just generate the foundation and the exterior walls, and the house will look just fine from the outside. And that'll sort of allow you to just make fast houses for the north end and other such areas. And this is a good example also of how to apply the different types of balconettes on different parts of the windows, different types of awnings, and all of that's set in the outer details. So we have multiple dormers, we have doors, store windows, gable windows, regular windows. Right now we have 6 sets of them. Let's get into some of the more nitty-gritty stuff for a little bit. Gonna load back up the default house. Actually, we'll load up the showcase, because that'll probably be the best example of how everything gets impacted. After that, we can modify the advanced options. So these are all sort of just interesting things they can change. Generally, most of these don't need to be changed for the house to look normal. For example, if you make the foundation separation 5, the house will look very bizarre. But if you want to do an effect like that because you want a bigger foundation, you can change these sorts of things. And this goes from everything from wall thickness to the thickness of an indent when you indent these store windows, to how big the rafters are, to the height of the roof, to everything regarding the dormers, the edge depth, edge width, frame width, chimneys, stairs, railing thickness, for example. All of that can be set in the advanced options and tinkered with to your heart's content. And last but not least, there's the references. The only thing I have to say about references is don't touch them. They're basically there just for the house customizer to build what needs to build. It has references for all the railing sprites and all the shutters and the awnings and the balconette prefabs. If you just drag in a script, it won't have any of these references, so the house won't be able to construct, for example, all these nice little railings here, which are just made from the prefabs that are inside the references section there. So make sure you're dragging in the prefab for the customizable house. But that about wraps it up. Hope this has been a useful tutorial for learning the basics of the house customizer. And I'll see you guys later.